All right, guys, welcome back to the College World Podcast. Today, me and Nick are a preview and prediction for quarterfinal CFP playoff game between Arizona State and Texas. The Longhorns are once again 13.5-point favorites. 52 is the total. 1 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN from Atlanta on New Year's Day. Getting things started with this Texas offense, coming off a great game against Clemson, Nick. It was an interesting matchup against the Tigers. I thought Clemson would be able to, keep it close with some of its offensive play, but also its defensive play. I was wrong there. This defense got absolutely annihilated by a strong Texas rushing attack. I mean, that's a pretty solid defense that they faced, no joke. And I know they've been gashed on the ground against Georgia twice, where they put up less than 50 yards combined. Or I think actually 50 total combined in those two games. 292 against Clemson, though. They had a phenomenal day running the ball behind this elite O-line. Quintravion Wisner, Jaden Blue, they both had phenomenal games. Both had 100-plus yards. I mean, it was just a complete beatdown, Nick. And if they did that to Clemson, you would imagine they're going to try and do that to Arizona State. Obviously, this is going to be a big part of this offense moving forward. It's the best performance we've seen of the year against Texas. They did it earlier in the year, though, against Michigan, where they ran the ball quite well. 143 yards was not even close to as dominant as what we saw against the Tigers, where they ran the ball very well. And, Steve Sarkisian even said, he's like, partially that's kind of my fault for not sticking to the ground game. Today we stuck to it, and it was largely successful. What do you make of this newfound strength for Texas, it seems, Nick?
It's phenomenal strength for Texas. This team is now able to run the ball very effectively, and I think it really relieves the pressure on Quinn Ewers, who has shown to be a little bit shaky at times this season. It's really helpful when your offense can run the ball at a high clip. 173.5 yards per game on the ground, 4.6 yards per carry, and about 1.8 touchdowns per game for them on the ground. Really good numbers, right? This is an effective unit that can run the ball. Wisner has been really solid, 973, 5.1 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns for him, about 75 yards per game on the ground. Really good numbers for him. Blue has been really solid as well, 710 and 5.6 yards to carry, 8 scores for him. He's a really effective back in the red zone. They give him touches when they're in the red zone. Jarrett Gibson is solid as well as a number 3 back. They have great depth here. He has 377, about 5 yards per carry, and 4 scores for him. So a very effective unit that's pumping out a lot of yards per game. They're very effective, high averages. 3 guys right there with 5 yards per carry. They also plug Arch Manning in occasionally for design quarterback runs that have shown some success. So this is an offense that can do a lot for you. And you wonder, can Arizona State's defense stop this run? Can they stop the way that this new look Texas offense is clicking on the ground? It certainly could be a tough matchup.
Yeah, we'll offer our opinion on that a little bit later when we discuss the ASU defense. Keying in on this offensive line, though, I mean, these guys are great, not just in terms of generating a push up front. Pass protection's phenomenal. Kelvin Banks at left tackle needs no introduction. He's a phenomenal player. Hayden Connor at left guard. Center Jake Majors ended up leaving that game against Clemson of injury. I think he'll be all right. We'll have to check his status, though. You have to certainly monitor that as the days count down. DJ Kimball at right guard. Probably their weakest length. Him or Cameron Williams are right on the right side. These guys aren't bad by any means, Nick, but I would say this is probably the most vulnerable spot for this offensive line, and they're still tough to crack. Phenomenal unit here, and I'm glad they're finally leaning on this group, something that they really haven't done against Georgia in those 2 losses, which was disappointing. But this is a group that can carry you through the CFP.
This is a group that can certainly carry you through the CFP. I look at these guys, Banks, Hayden, Connor, and Jake Majors. These are all guys that are going to get some looks in the NFL draft. Banks will probably be, first-round pick, a high-end first-round pick. Connor and Majors will probably be taking in the 6th, 7th round range. But these are all 3 guys that should go and get drafted in the NFL draft. These are really solid players. DJ Campbell's been really solid. Cameron Williams has been good as well. This has been a very good offensive line, a very physical unit that's strong, holding well against the pass rush. Banks especially is a great leader at left tackle, really protects that side very well. I like what I've seen on this offensive line.
And, of course, we talk about Quinn Ewers, a guy, who's had sporadic play this year. Was good at times against Georgia, still completed less than 60% in that one here against Clemson. 17 of 24, 71%, only 202 yards, a touchdown. The 1 interception bounced off DeAndre Moore's hands. He seems to hobble this team whenever he's on the field. Isaiah Bond, he had a bad route against Georgia that led to a pick. So it's not just him, it's certainly his receivers not always being in sync. One thing Ewers did do, though, is he had some great downfield accuracy, I thought, against Clemson. But later on in the game, it's 4th down, a chance to potentially put the game away. The Tigers, they're surging, looking to make a comeback. Wide open on the drag route, and what's he do? He throws it behind the receiver, Nick, and they turn the ball over on downs. This sporadic play is unnecessary, and it's ridiculous. How can you throw it 40 yards downfield perfectly, but we can't do a 3-4 yard route in sync with our receivers? And stuff like that is what might cost this team from playing in a national championship. And here against ASU, they love playing with momentum. If you do that, again, it's certainly going to bite you at some point.
It is really weird how sporadic and just kind of odd his throws are sometimes. Some of his targets don't make a whole lot of sense. Some of the routes these wide receivers run don't make a whole lot of sense. Struggling in the intermediate game, but playing good football down the field in terms of passing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A lot of people thought maybe they should plug in Arch Manning prior to the playoff. Maybe they should get Arch some reps and see what he could do. That was certainly a conversation that was being had, I think, among some circles, but I didn't know how serious that is because Ewers seems to be holding his team back a little bit. He's not the quarterback that we thought he was going to be. He's looked shaky at times. Obviously, he's been having struggle with some health issues as well. About 2,800 yards passing, well, closer to 29, 26 touchdowns and 10 picks for him. 66% comp rate. Not bad numbers, but definitely disappointing numbers from a guy that you thought could be a Heisman potential winner in the preseason that really looked like he was going to elevate his game and grow as the season went on. He's just not playing great football right now, and it's certainly disappointing for this Texas offense.
He has an impressive group of receivers, though. Bond, you're hoping to be healthy enough for this game. Ryan Wingo, if not, will step up in his absence, and he'll be great. Gunnar Helmet, tight end, leads the way with 55 receptions. Has 688 yards as well. He's a great target for them. And then Matthew Golden in the slot. 787 yards, 8 touchdowns this year. Really good receiving group here. Silas Bolden, underrated athlete as well. We'll get in on occasion. And one last thing I'll ask you about the Texas offense, Nick. Do the potential coaching decisions, change your opinion on this team? Because a lot of people were upset they had late in the game a fourth down that they didn't convert because backup quarterback comes in with a backup center and they drop the snap, and it could have been very disastrous. And a lot of people are like, "What are we doing?" And it seems like some of these decisions from time to time could certainly plague this team.
Yeah, I think Sark's kind of overcoaching himself. You saw that at times in some of the decisions he made play calling at Alabama and some of his previous stops, so it doesn't entirely shock me. Some of the decisions they do seem to overcoach themselves and take gambles like that are a little unnecessary. It does worry me. I don't think it's the biggest issue in some of these potential matchups, and I can understand why it would concern some Texas fans. I think it's a middle of the road issue for me. I'm not too cold on it, but I'm not too hot on it either. I think it's something you have to keep an eye on as the season develops. It is a bit interesting though how they're going to try and roll the dice there, putting Manning in, like you said, putting a backup center in during a key fourth down play. You would think you want to rely on your more traditional players that are going to be able to get the job done there for you.
Now we move to the Arizona State offense. Of course, this is a group that also has a headliner of their own in Cam Scatterbill. 1,568 yards, 19 touchdowns. Probably should have got more love for the Heisman, Nick. We were in that press conference after Iowa State where he made claim to being the best running back in college football, and no one was going to argue with him after the performance he put on. 170 yards, 2 scores, 16 attempts. He kept ripping off run after run. He had like 350 yarders where nobody could get him to the floor. This guy is ridiculous, and I know they're facing an elite defensive line. It's probably going to overwhelm you up front, but this guy just finds a way. He's incredibly gritty, plays a lot of toughness and confidence as well. This is the perfect guy you want to go into war with. What are your thoughts on Scatterbill and his chances of running over an elite run defense?
Yeah, this is a guy you want to go to war with, a guy that had good numbers at Sac State, has had great numbers at Arizona State. In a year where Janty wasn't the type of unicorn player he was, obviously I think Cam Scatterbill would get a lot more attention. It would have been in the Final Four in New York. I still think he should have been there because this guy's been so electric to watch. 1,500 yards rushing, 6 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns, also 500 yards receiving, and 3 touchdowns. An underrated part of his game, 37 receptions, really good numbers, a really good asset out of the backfield. They use him on some play action, some option plays. He is just such a versatile running back, so talented. I think part of the reason why you should give Arizona State a chance this game is because Scatterbill could really break off runs. Yes, the Texas defensive line is really good. I certainly understand that. They are a phenomenal unit, but Scatterbill is a very special player that he could break plays happen. He can make things happen out of nothing, break tackles, and really turn a play positive that looks like a negative. Such a fun player to watch. I'm excited to watch him on the national stage in this game. I think he's going to have a really big day and be a big key for this Arizona State offense.
He's also the second leading pass catcher for this team. Of course, Jordan Tyson out with a shoulder injury. That's a major loss as we now enter championship rounds. This is bad for Arizona State because they just are not very deep at this position. Xavier Gilroy had 2 receptions for 2 touchdowns in the Big 12 title game. Melcon Stovall ended up being the leading pass catcher, nearly 100 yards. He's a veteran, he's been around a long time. He's going to be your undersized speedster that's going to make plays downfield. At tight end, you have a nice player, Shimon Mateer. Wasn't as involved against Iowa State, but has 290 and 5 touchdowns on the year. That's it. You got about 3 guys, and Scatterbill is going to have to get a lot of work as a pass catcher. This isn't great, Nick, for Sam Leavitt. He's having a great year, though. 63% comp rate, 24 touchdowns and 5 picks. He's also a pretty reliable runner with 383 and 5 touchdowns. This is a pretty good player. I like what he's accomplished this year. He's been very smart with the football. He had an interception in 4 games in a row early on in the year. He only has 1 over the last 2 months. So, I mean, he certainly has calmed down some of the early season struggles. If you want to beat a team like Texas, Nick, we saw it with Clemson, where they have legitimate 5-star pass catchers going out there making plays. Arizona State just doesn't have that talent at wide receiver. I'm confident in these guys' ability to make plays every here and there, but in tight coverage consistently, it's going to be hard for them to move the ball through the air.
Yeah, I certainly concede that it's a bit concerning that Tyson might be playing this game. That definitely damages some of the options for this offense. He was such a talented player, really nice young man as well, really good guy on and off the field. Definitely disappointed that he won't be playing this game. I do think Gilroy has played a lot better football as of late. 320, 16.8, and 5 scores for him, including the 2 touchdowns that were 2 pretty acrobatic catches in the Big 12 title game. Huge moments for him there. I'm expecting a big game out of him if they want to be able to compete in this matchup. I think Stovall's a really solid piece who's playing better football, getting a lot more targets. Kyson Brown, the running back, also gets a few grabs of the backfield, while Kamon Martier, the tight end, has 5 touchdowns in the red zone. He's a guy that they might target. Also, you highlighted there that the quarterback, Sam Levitt, can run the ball. Certainly a guy that has some ability in his back pocket to run the ball. I do like what I've seen out of him so far this season. This is a very good offense that's got some well-rounded looks, and I think they can produce on the field. Yes, it's a Texas defense, probably one of the tougher defenses they've played against all year, but I'm still positive that they're able to produce some solid plays.
You talk about an offensive line that's going to have a major challenge. Joshua Atkins, Emmett Bowl, they both play at left tackle. Ben Coleman's been a phenomenal player in pass protection at left guard. Kyle Scott, right guard's been really good. At center, Liafai Fatanu, he's been phenomenal in pass protection as well. Then right tackle, Max Inacor, he's been all right. More of probably a liability, but a consistent player nonetheless. Do you think this offensive line is built to withstand this major test, which is an incredibly deep, nasty SEC defensive line, Nick? Because it seems doubtful that they will, but shockers happen in CFB.
Shockers do happen. They don't play a whole lot of talented defensive lines. Obviously, I know they played an SC team earlier in the year, but that was Mississippi State, not really a comparable defensive line in my opinion. So yes, I'm a little worried about them in the trenches. I do think this is an offensive line that has some solid pieces and a unit that's progressed throughout the season. A lot of juniors and seniors on this offensive line, a lot of veterans. Can they match up well here? I don't think so. That's certainly the weakest part of the matchup for me. Can they win the battle if they have a solid day? I think it's certainly possible, but I would be concerned. I'm an Arizona State fan. This is a very dominant Texas defensive line.
Now that leads us to this Texas defense, and we'll go lead into it right with that defensive line. And these guys are nasty. They have so much size, so much grit. Barron Sorrell, Vernon Broughton on the interior. These guys are phenomenal. Ethan Burke hasn't been as good, but can make a play from time to time. Colin Simmons, Trey Moore off the edge are great pass rushers. Bill Norton's been making some big plays over the past couple of weeks. Jermaine Lowell, an underrated addition from them in the portal. And of course, Alfred Collins has been an elite run defender. I mean, this is the best defensive line in college football, I would say, Nick. And I don't know what is up with these OCs. Texas A&M 4th and goal. What do they do? At the 1, run it right downhill at Texas. They lost 6 yards. Garrett Riley is a horrendous play caller. Tried the same thing with the game on the line. I think Kenny Dillingham's smarter than that, Nick. They're not going to try and attack these guys straight up. I don't know why people keep thinking that's a good idea. It's not going to work. So if Texas isn't going to be given those opportunities, they're going to have to be stout on the edge.
They gotta be stout. They gotta be stout on the edge, certainly. And I think this is a defensive line that is so strong. You read off a bunch of names there. These guys are all productive. 5 different guys on the defensive line have 30-plus tackles. Starting with Alfred Collins, 47 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, a sack for him. Colin Simmons, 39, 13 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. He's been really good. He has a pick as well. Sorrell, 38 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. While Broughton has 34, 4, and 3. Jermaine Lowell's been really solid. 30 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Trey Moore, 29, 7, and 3.5 for him. While Ethan Burke, a quieter year for him, 24 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a pick 6 that he took for 30 yards. And then Bill Norton, who's playing really good football as of late, 13 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack to boot. Very productive unit there. Obviously, I rattled off a ton of powerful stats. A lot of tackles for loss, a lot of sacks. Really good season so far for these guys.
They only surrender 104 yards per game on the ground. Of course, an athletic linebacking group led by Anthony Hill is going to be big in that. Will you have to spy Sam Levitt? Probably not too often. I think in the red zone, that's certainly going to be something he does. 3rd and 5, something like that. They're certainly going to have a guy in his face. They've just done a great job in terms of their scheming. I loved what they did against A&M, where the pocket collapses, the quarterback steps up, where he's very good at running, and there's a man in his face, a spy. So it's going to be hard to find those opportunities. Nick Levitt's going to have to make plays from the pocket due to his presence in the middle. Iona Lafau has been really good. David Gabenda as well. I mean, this is a stout trio of linebackers that have all been quite consistent. They've been really good against the run as well.
This is a very stout linebacking unit. Hill leads the team in tackles, 99 total tackles, should break that 100 mark in this game. 16 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, a pick, 4 forced fumbles. A stat sheet suffer, do-it-all guy, really impressive player overall. Kabenda's been really solid as well, 56 total tackles. 5 tackles for loss, a really solid asset, while Lialafau, 51 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss. 2 sacks, a pick, 2 pass breakups for him. A good, productive linebacking core that's solid over the middle.
Now we look at a secondary that's been phenomenal this year. A lot of people, consider this to be the nation's best secondary, and it probably is. They haven't played the toughest of attacks throughout the season, though. And they just played Klubnik and Clemson, and they got gashed. 336 yards, 3 touchdowns. At some point, it just felt like a mistake was coming, or they were going to, turn the things up in the back end. It just never seemed to happen. All day long, they were being tested, including Malik Muhammad had a pretty rough day in one-on-one coverage. He can bounce back, though. He's still a pretty good corner. Of course, on the other side, Jedi Barron, the Thorpe Award winner, has been elite in coverage this year. Probably not going to be tested too much. Gavin Holmes, I think he's been a liable, a bit of a liability this year, but he looked pretty good against Clemson. Jalen Gilbew, a veteran player in the slot. I like his abilities as a run defender as well. And then, of course, at safety, you have 2 great players in Michael Taft, Andrew Makamba. Great football IQ there. These guys have been stonewalls in coverage. Makamba coming downhill against the run. He's phenomenal. It just seems like it's going to be very hard for Arizona State to win the game running the ball unless they just own things up front, which seems doubtful as well, Nick, because this secondary, they can make up for what the D-line can't, and that's not many.
The secondary is very good against the run. This is a very good unit overall. I think Tiafi is a really solid player at safety, a guy that you really use at a couple of different plays. 63 total tackles for him, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him, 8 pass breakups. Makumba's been really good since transferring over from Clemson. He's looked polished this year. 55 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 picks, 7 pass breakups. Jillibu has been really solid as well. 54 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups. Jahad Barron, an All-American who's having a really good season. 50 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 5 picks, 11 pass breakups. Obviously earned that All-American honors. Malik Muhammad, 31 total tackles, a tackle for loss for him. Jalen McDonald as well and Maurice Blackwell each have 26 total tackles and a tackle for loss for McDonald. A solid defensive unit overall. This is a good Texas team that's playing good football on defense. They're solid against the run and solid against the pass game, about 100 yards per game on the ground and 150 yards per game through the air. A very stingy defense that's facing a high volume rushing attack that's going to hope to try and find a way to exploit this defense.
Now he moves to a Sun Devil defense that's going to have a big challenge as well. Toughest matchup they've seen all year. This team has been good against the run, though. They've only allowed 117 yards per game. Best attack they faced was probably UCF. Gave up 177 and 4 scores in that game. It's not the greatest effort, but they didn't completely get torn apart. Other than that, though, it's been really rare for opposing teams to approach the 200-yard mark, which no one has eclipsed this season. The thing for them is you need difference makers when it comes to games like this, and they just don't seem to have that many up front. Clayton Smith's probably going to be your best edge rusher. CJ Fight's a good player. Elijah O'Neal, Jeff Clark, I like what Prince Dorba brings to the table. Justin Woodley as well. They have a solid, 6-man rotation here. A couple other guys get involved. Those are going to be the main ones. The lack of a difference maker, Nick, you need them in games like this, and they just don't really have one on the defensive line. How bad do you think they'll plague them here?
It certainly is a worrying thing for me, right? This is a matchup concern and matchup potential nightmare. This defensive line that's just not that great of a unit. They struggle to produce tackles for loss and sacks compared to Texas, who produce a lot of tackles for loss and a lot of sacks. Smith, I really like him. 29 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. While CJ Fight, 29 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Good numbers there. Elijah O'Neal's a really solid physical piece as well. 28 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. 5 pass breakups for him, 4 for Smith. Jeffrey Clark, 20 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Zach Swanson, 16 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss for him, while Prince Dorba has 11 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. And then Jacob Conagia is solid as well, 9 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Not the most productive unit, certainly an issue, I think, on paper. Do they match up well here? No. Could these guys have a decent day? I think it's possible, but this is certainly a match you want to keep an eye on. Things can get out of hand if Texas can really run the ball effectively.
11 of the 21 sacks came across the first 4 games of the year, Nick, against some weaker opponents, likes of Miss State, Wyoming, and Texas State, and then against Texas Tech as well. So they really have not had a pass rush for most of the back half of the season. Yes, they've been winning games, but you need to find some negative plays, and if you can't do it against the Big 12 lines, good luck in this one. I like what they have in the middle of their defense, though. These are where the game changers come. Miles Ghost Rouser is a phenomenal rover there at linebacker and safety. Caleb McCullough's been a very impressive player. I like what he's able to accomplish in coverage and as a run defender. Keyshawn Elliott, him and Rouser came over from New Mexico State. They've been great both as against the run this year. This is a nice linebacking group, Nick. Jordan Crook will get on the field occasionally as well. These are where your playmakers are going to be. These guys, on the other hand, they can certainly make some bigger plays than the defensive line can, and I think the confidence they might play with is going to be very impressive, and I think it'll shock some people, and it'll be interesting to see if Texas can overcome it. I think they will, but these guys right here, I'm confident in their ability to play big time in this game.
I do like what this linebacking core can do. They have a couple different players here. You plug Miles Rouser in, who's more of a jack-of-all-trades kind of guy. You play him in the box, you move around. He's been really solid. 93 total tackles, leads the team in tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a sack, 5 pass breakups. Caleb McCullough has been really solid as well, 73 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 picks and a pass breakup for him. Keyshawn Elliott, 57 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a pick for him. Jordan Cook's been really solid in coverage as well, 50 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, and then Cyrus Fiasu, 33 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a pick 6, and 2 pass breakups. Good production as coverage assets, solid tacklers as well. This is a good linebacking unit here. I like what they have in the middle of the defense.
I like the secondary as well. This is a group that said, they're one of the best in the country, and I think I wouldn't, stretch it that far, but I think they're vastly underrated. Did a pretty good job against Iowa State, the Big 12 title, facing 2 great receivers, held them in check, 55% comp rate, 214 yards. Not much was available. Only 300-yard game allowed this year was against BYU, where the Cougars were playing from behind. So this is secondary that's really checked out this year. They've had 16 touchdowns. In terms of yards per game, 219, pretty fair number. And then 15 interceptions as well. Like those numbers. You look at 2 corners that are going to have big responsibilities. Keith Abney, Javan Robinson, I think, has been playing some really good ball here down the stretch. In the slot, Shamari Simmons, he'll be missing the first half of this game due to a bit of a bogus targeting call. He can be a tone setter, especially against the run, so that's going to be a big miss. Hopefully they can hang around so he can make an impact in the second half. And Xavier Alford, he's having a great year, perennial All-American. He's been phenomenal in coverage for them. Of course, Rouser will play a good bit in the back end. What do you think of this secondary, Nick? Because they're not going to get no love in terms of nation's best, but I like the confidence. I don't even think they're too far off the mark. These are some good players that have gotten better as the years went on.
One of the nation's most underrated secondaries, such a talented unit. Xavier Alford's a really good leader for this team, a great veteran, 82 total tackles, 2 picks, 4 pass breakups for him. I've been really pleased with the way that he's progressed so far this season. A talented player for this team. Simmons, obviously has that issue with the targeting call, so he won't be playing in the first half. Bit disappointing, certainly. That's a disappointing thing to see. 70 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups there. Keith Albie's been solid as well, 50 total tackles, 3 picks, 7 pass breakups. Javian Robinson's been really solid as well, 37 total tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 picks, 4 pass breakups. Chase Welch has been solid in reps for them, 19 total tackles, 2 picks, 7 pass breakups, and Kamari Wilson's been okay in decent reps as well, with 11 total tackles. A guy that needs to work on some of his tackling and maybe some of his coverage assets. Overall, though, I like the secondary a lot. I think this is a really good unit. I'm singing their praises. They're a very talented unit that's playing good football, giving up about 220 yards per game through the air. Not a terrible number, in my opinion, about 1.2 touchdowns per game as well. They're facing a tough passing attack here, but I think they can find some success against Quinn Ewers.
Now we're going to tail the team comparisons. Pretty clear, cut and dry. Texas will have the advantage in every single position. Maybe even running back, because that duo just eclipsed 100 yards each. Scadaboo, though, he had 262 yards against Mississippi State. In Texas, they had 198 as a team when they played them. Sure, that's probably not the fairest comparison, right? But that's just a great example of the X factor he can be. So I'll show him the respect at the running back position. Everywhere else, though, Nick, hard to really make any concessions.
I think this is a fair thing when you look at it, right? This is just a talented Texas team playing in the SEC. Definitely a difficult thing to see, if difficult matchup. Scadaboo, I think, definitely earned the spot to get the advantage at running back. He's such a talented player. This is a very interesting matchup, but then again, you don't win matchups on paper, so you got to play the game and see how it shakes out.
The final thoughts in the prediction. Keys to the game for ASU, you got to match the physicality the best you can, get Scat going on the edge. Then O-line continue to dominate for Texas and then shut down that run game. I think they're going to cover the spread. Nick, you have a more lofty prediction, and I don't think it's all that wild. I can't really name any times this year Texas has just dominated opponents. Michigan, maybe. I don't know. They had Davis Warren at quarterback, so it's not the greatest. They had a pretty good day against that defense, though, nonetheless. They've looked bad in the games against Georgia. Haven't been all that great in their SEC competition. I think Texas is probably due for a letdown at some point. Even against Clemson, it was kind of a shocking game where that should have been a lot closer if they don't get that 4th down stop. Who knows what happens late in that contest. I like the boldness from you, Nick, because I think some teams, they're not going to be bigger, they're not going to be physical, they're not going to be faster. But some teams, they play with grit, and they're hard to beat, and they're hard to get out of there. In Texas, they've just not shown that gut punch. You didn't see it against Clemson. They should have knocked them out of the building, Nick, and it didn't happen. Arizona State with Dillingham. He's just that one coach that I think can certainly keep things a little bit closer just due to the finesse and the consistency he can play and coach with. I think Arizona State hangs around in this one. I think they cover. I just think it's impossible for them to win when you look at the matchup in the trenches. But I think the biggest thing for them is coming to this game and calm yourself down quickly. Get into a groove of the game. Settle down. If you can settle down and the score's still close, you have a chance of winning this one. And you clearly think they're going to come in here and they're going to play with a lot of confidence. And they won't let things get away from them early as you're taking the upset.
Yeah, dare I say that Texas has been a little bit fraudulent at time this year. They've gotten away with a lot of games. They didn't look great in the SEC title game or in the first matchup against Georgia. Didn't really look great at all against Clemson that second half, where they seemed to kind of let things get away, and they could have certainly lost that game. Clemson was playing with a lot of punch in the second half, certainly. When you look at this Arizona State team, yes, they don't match up well on Texas against Texas on paper, but this is why you play the game. That's why I'm going to roll the dice here. Sometimes you got to gamble, or in the industry of rolling the dice a little bit. I'm going to roll the dice, and I'm going to take Arizona State here. I think Cam Scabo has a good day. That's certainly part of it. I think Sam Levitt plays really smart and comfortable football, where I think Ewers will be a little uncomfortable and make some mistakes that will help out Arizona State, give them some short field position that will certainly help them out in the long run. Do I expect Texas fans to travel well? Certainly. They're going to show up. A lot of them are going to be there. This is a big moment for them, but I think Arizona State, this is a program that's playing with some juice. Kenny Dillingham is a phenomenal coach, a great young man, and a great coach. We spoke to him at the Big 12 title game. Such a humble guy, really cool guy who's building a program and building a culture. This is a team that's overachieving. They're playing great football. They're really attacking it. They're solid on the ground. They got a decent enough wide receiving core even without Tyson. I like what they can do. As long as they can stay competent on defense, don't make mistakes, don't let the game get too far out of hand. I think this offense gives them a punching chance at all times, really, in my opinion. This is a team that can play with some juice here. Got to roll the dice, got to pick some upsets somewhere. It's not going to be full chalk. I just think Arizona State are a team that's playing so hot right now. They won a bunch of games in a row. They looked really good in the Big 12 title game. I give them a punching chance here. I think they're going to certainly cover the spread, and they're going to win this game. I'm really excited for this matchup, and I want to see what happens.
And I think they'll certainly take some risks. They're really good at doing that. They're really good at executing those risks as well. We've seen that early in the Big 12 title game. Deep in their own territory, went forward on 4th and short. Hard sell play action, went deep, and then a couple plays later, they scored a touchdown. So they're going to take risks, and they do a good job of capitalizing on those. So this should be a pretty interesting game. I like how this one starts the day off, Nick, before two bangers to end the night. So great scheduling on the part of CFB. It's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.